with Isaiah Stewart being on the trade block. And the teams that have been linked to Isaiah Stewart, the San Antonio Spurs, the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, and the Los Angeles Lakers.
He would be a great fit in all of them.
I know. Are you kind of surprised that the Pistons are willing to put Isaiah Stewart on the trade block? And there's one team I just don't want to see him go. I don't want to see him in a Spurs uniform. If Wimpy says go give a hard foul to Mason Plumlee and Bismack Biyombo, Stu would actually do it.
Oh, he would take the assignment to heart and he would take it to another level. So before the postseason, if you would have told me that Isaiah Stewart would end his career in any other uniform than a Pistons uniform, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
Then the postseason happened. And, with Isaiah Stewart, it's, I talked about this on my pod a little bit, and it's kind of just reiterating and just looking at like what Trajan said about Isaiah Stewart at his postseason press conference, where he said there's Isaiah Stewart's season. Like he had a tale of two seasons, right? Because there was the season before the altercation in Charlotte, and then there's the season after the altercation in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And after the altercation in Charlotte, he was suspended for like 7 games, came back for like 5 or 6, got injured with the calf, maybe had like 2 or 3 games of run before the postseason, but didn't truly have his legs like back in time for the playoffs, and played so poorly that the Pistons had to multiple times address whether or not he was hurt. And, even I think back to, and the thing that just really stuck in my mind and was shocking to me throughout this playoff run was the end of Game 7, the blown box out by Isaiah Stewart on the free throw that got Cleveland back to the line. He was brought out of the game, and then he gets into like a verbal altercation with Jarrett Jack and the other coaches on the coaching staff. And he's someone that going into the postseason, JB said was like Isaiah Stewart embodies the heart and soul of he is the standard bearer of this team's identity. And then for him to essentially be played out of the rotation with how things went in the postseason just felt like it felt significant, right? And you don't want to, you try to not read too much into those things, because some of it was just Paul Reed was coming in and was kicking ass and was playing some of the best basketball of his life. But part of it was also the fact that Isaiah Stewart was just bad throughout the majority of this postseason. He had one game where he had like 7 or 8 blocks in Orlando. I think he legitimately had 1 block after that the rest of the postseason combined, which for someone who is among the elite rim protectors in the league when he's at his best, to be someone that teams were like willingly challenge, throughout like in the interior is just something that was tough. And again, I'm not saying that this is who Isaiah Stewart is and who he's going to be throughout the rest of his career, but in the most important postseason run of his life, Isaiah Stewart just did not play well. And again, that really was his first postseason run too, because, the year before he wasn't really, he was out for a lot of that postseason run with the Knicks. Like he only played in the first game. I think even then he only played in the first half in round 1 last year. So all that to say, the Pistons have, they're about to pay Jalen Duren. We've already talked about, we've talked a lot about how they have a really deep center room. And if anything, they have too deep of a center room, because you don't normally get that level of production from your third big. And with Isaiah Stewart only having 2 years left in his contract, with Paul Reed being on a lot more of a team-friendly deal, people are like, well, why do you extend Paul Reed? It's like, well, now, there's a pretty clear delineation as to why, because Paul Reed is someone where if he plays at that level, he is more than capable of being your backup big. And if Isaiah Stewart is a chip that you can use to get significant improvement in areas that you need to, then that is absolutely something you should explore. However, I think it is important to acknowledge, going back to that comment of giving up someone who is so integral to this team's identity, so integral to the physicality that they played with, the tone that was set on the defensive side of the floor. We see Jalen Duren at times. I feel like he is, impacted by Isaiah Stewart and the physicality he brings. Because when Isaiah Stewart is bringing that challenge, I think that motivates someone like Duren to do that more so himself. And so, if you do make that type of move, if you do swap out an Isaiah Stewart for like a Trey Murphy or like whatever you end up swapping him out for, you have to make sure that guys like Asar are setting that standard. Guys like Paul Reed continue to set that standard. Guys like Jalen Duren, like especially with the money that he's about to get, he's going to have to be a big part of setting that standard. Like if Pistons move off of Isaiah Stewart, they have to make sure that they're not moving off of their identity either, because that was a big piece of what he played.
I 100% agree. I think if you watch the playoffs, that 8-block game he had against the Magic is the same game that he hurt his knee. Mm-hmm. And I remember Cody Davis writing a story because people really questioned, is he healthy? Because in that Cavs series, he was blowing box outs. I know exactly what play you mentioned. He's at the free throw line, didn't box out, and the Knicks were able to get to the free throw line 2 more times.
Cavs.
Yeah, Cavs. I'm sorry. I see this Knicks fan like just going at it with Pistons fans right now, and I absolutely love it. Pistons fans are just I feel like Pistons fans and Knicks fans, like, they probably have some of the most toxic conversations, like just back and forth. Like, I'm just reading some of these comments, and it's getting personal in the live chat.
100%.
Right now. I'm staying out of it. I'm just letting them fight. But the Cavs series where he did blow out a couple of the box outs, and I saw like Stu kind of yell at Jared Jack and JB, and he didn't get any more time in that game whatsoever. And like you mentioned, JB has always said, like, the heart and soul of the team, like, Isaiah Stewart is, the Detroit Pistons toughness. We've always said, like, a culture setter, like, and longest tenured Piston. He's been here the longest out of anybody. He's been here longer than Cade Cunningham. And I know a lot of fans have a lot of attachment with him, which I understand. But like, when there are reports that Jalen Duren possibly could get anywhere from 35 to upwards of $40 million, it's really hard to say, like, yeah, our center crop's going to be close to $65 million.
Yeah, you can't spend over $60 million on the center room in this league. You can't. Like, as much as as bigs are still such a massive part of this game, but to build out the rest of your roster, you can't be spending that much in that room. And again, like, I don't question that the front office and the coaching staff are still in lockstep. I do wonder if this could be, though, the first delineation and opinion that they have, in the sense of JB has said, and I remember because like one of the things I asked him was like, how much do you enjoy going to war with Isaiah Stewart night in, night out? And his answer was, it's one of my favorite things I get to do. And I imagine that even though JB could very well understand why they would have to move off of someone like Isaiah Stewart, I'm sure it's not something he would be thrilled about. Unless, again, you're getting an absolutely awesome player in return that definitively makes you better, that plugs, it's like, that's why it's like, okay, if you're going to do it, it would have to be someone like Trey Murphy, where it's like, for a fact he's plugging a hole in this team that would make them better. And that has been, something that really needs to be addressed. But it's like, if you're just moving them for the sake of salary, then that's where like fans would have a right, to like have some say. And so that's why, like, when you do look at like, okay, who could be the trade partners? What could be the trade package? All those different things. I don't really know what San Antonio has to give up outside of draft capital that would really be like super interesting for Detroit. I mean, like, I know like Devin Vassell would certainly be interesting. They definitely have a surplus of guards. They got to open up some room for Dylan Harper somehow. I certainly would be intrigued by that. Like Boston, I'm sure like they, like you could look at like Sam Hauser or, get Eric Vincent's favorite player, Derek White, in the building. That's something you could definitely look at. Shout out Eric. But like, it would have to be the right trade. And it's like LA, they have nothing. I mean, they have nothing. Like they have nothing to trade. Like that would be of any interest to anybody. So, unless you want to play some Connect 4, which, no.
I'm good.
Yeah. All right. Legit question. Would you rather have Chaz Lanier or Dalton Connect right now?
Both Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah.
I would probably bet my money on Chaz Lanier. And I know he didn't play a whole lot this year, but I've heard a lot of good things about the kid's work ethic and how much time he puts into the gym and how I think they believe Chaz Lanier could be a rotational piece coming up this season.
And I think Chaz very well could be too. But how depressing is that for Dalton Connect, to where it's like a few years ago, you probably like people were like, "Oh, Dalton Connect's the one." No, he is not. But all that to say, it's like, again, it's so tough because it's like he's the guy who's compared to my favorite childhood player. Like Isaiah Stewart's compared so closely to Ben Wallace. We've seen he is the longest tenured Piston. He is like one of the bright spots of the Troy Weaver era as far as draft picks and what they were able to secure. And he is certainly one of those guys where you love to have him on your team. You hate to be playing against him, and so. He's one of those guys where it's like, again, you want to make sure that if you're making that move, you want to make the right move, because he is one of those guys where if you had to face him in the postseason later on, he could come back to haunt you. But again, as long as they have guys who can still like maintain and uphold the identity that the Pistons play with, I don't think it's something that's going to be like a massive team changing thing. But I do think that is like where the risk comes in.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you do trade him, don't trade him in the East. Trade him in the West.
Absolutely not trade him in the East. Especially, like, why would you give Boston someone like that? Why would you want the Celtics? Perfect. Yeah, like, absolutely not.
I could totally see a team like Boston. This is hypothetical, and I saw Koo mention this. Like, watch Boston plug and play Stu, and actually, like, people saying, like, why didn't he do this in Detroit? Like, I could totally see Stu pick and pop like 8 times a game, protect the rim, and let's say we do have to see them in like a conference finals or possibly a first round of the finals, and Stu's just blocking everything in sight and talking shit. Like, Pistons fans would absolutely hate to see that. And I don't want to do like a 1-to-1 comparison, but someone had mentioned, is like, if I see Stu in another uniform, it'll remind me when we didn't want to pay Ben Wallace to stay in the Detroit Pistons uniform when he went.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of the worst case scenario, where it's like that team was still really good record wise. That team was still, still made deep runs in the postseason. Like they still had the foundations of a good team, but they didn't have the punch. They didn't have the same physicality, and you could just tell, even when they were a 64-win team, they were still not the best team in the Eastern Conference at that time.
No, like I could totally see Stu, like, if he goes to a different situation, I could see him on like a Miles Turner trajectory where he's protecting the rim, like top 5 in blocks if he's starting, and hitting like anywhere from like 80 to 100 threes a year, and just being like a stretch big for a team. Not to mention, he's basically on a mid-level exception, but it'll be interesting to see if he does get moved. It sounds like there's a lot of momentum with him possibly getting moved this season, with the anticipation of extensions with not only Jalen Duren, but Asar Thompson as well.